Welcome in, everybody. Another fun one today that you guys have all been looking for. And I can't tell you the number of questions I have regarding this topic, Bitcoin on a budget. And as usual, this channel is about math, money, and freedom. No frills, no shills, just raw data that'll help you build financial freedom, point you in the right direction using data and analysis. So the top questions that I've been getting for quite some time now, particularly over the last month, beyond the am I too late? But if I invested now, for example, $200 a week for 10 years, could I retire on that? If I invested $50 a week for 10 years, is it worth my time? If I invested 2,000 British pounds a month, what will it amount to? And if I invested 2,000 euros one time now, what will it be worth in 10 years? Now, all of this analysis is done in great detail as usual, and I'll walk through the assumptions as I get there. But I just want you all to remember, you can take any permutation or combination of these numbers and come to your own conclusions. And if you need further details, drop a comment below. And if you want to see this in Ethereum, just write Ethereum below as well, and I'll run the same analysis around how many Ethereum you can achieve and what it'll mean based on these same kind of parameters. So FOMO times, we still have a little bit of that right now. People are worried about missing out. Now, the pain is almost palpable when you see the people now with Ethereum, and the fact that Ethereum has gone from like $200 just over a year ago to nearly 3,500 right now. And that's bringing about a lot of animosity. So I just wish everybody could just get along and be happy. Those that have success, so be it. And anyway, let's not worry about them too much. So the big question is, does it make sense to be slow and steady or sprint? And what I mean by that, does it make sense to invest partial amounts, piece by piece, week by week, month by month for a long period of time? Or is it better off just to put one big installment up front? I will answer all those questions today. So first of all, historically, if we look back, how much would I have? If I put $50 a week into Bitcoin 10 years ago, basically, you would have invested about $23,500. And the value today would be $14.85 million, or up about 63,000%. Yes, that is dramatic. And yes, they were special circumstances. Because when you start from a very, very low number, like 10 cents or $1, and you go all the way up to where we are today, of course you're going to have huge returns. So don't expect those in the future as we go forward. But you can expect some returns. So let's look historically at exactly what went down. So the price action over the last 11 years, you saw typically, it happens in cycles, big returns in the year 2013, 2017, and many expect huge returns in 2021. We only have about 100% so far, which is also staggering, but to some, they want more. Now, historically, we had, a 55x, a 13x, and this year, it wouldn't surprise me if we have a 4 to 6x at the very least. Maybe even more, considering the amount of institutional investors and high net worth money that's coming during the summer that we all expect. Big returns over the last 11 years, and I expect that to continue. Now, in addition, as you've heard me say before, if you've seen any of my videos, there is a new balance sheet. It's very, very important to keep crypto as part of your portfolio. I don't care if it's 1% or 5%, or as Ray Dalio would say, 20%. Again, none of this is investment advice, but keeping all of your assets as a fiat currency, it's just going to melt away. So beware of that. So it's better to have liabilities as fiat and assets as crypto as we go forward. Again, just quick public service announcement reminder. Now let's look at a scenario. Okay, so imagine we invest $200 a week until December 2030 in a fiat currency. And that means at the current bank rates, we'll have about $100,048 at a 0.01% return, which is quite generous. And I checked 5 banks as to what the returns are today in their savings accounts. And if you're in Europe, returns will even be negative. So just bear that in mind. Very, very, very poor levels of returns. So again, $200 a week, $100,000 after 10 years. Now, what happens if we invest into Bitcoin for that same amount? So what I did was I built out 3 scenarios. Number 1, I call my sandbag scenario, which is my very conservative model, and that is Bitcoin price of about $497,000 in the year 2030. My model, which is a modified version of taking into account about 36 analyst models plus 2 of my own, I come to now about $827,000 by December 2030. And my excessive model is now 1.5 million. There are many that are calling for $1 million Bitcoin by the year 2024 or even sooner, but I'm much more conservative. But even at that, I still call it an excessive model. Now, if you invest $200 a week in Bitcoin, you will more than 5x your money based on my model. So you can see here, $200 a week, dollar costing averaging like clockwork will get you 0.6 of a Bitcoin, again, based on my model. Now you notice, if we go to the excessive model, you purchase less over time. The sandbag model, you purchase more because it's cheaper on average week to week. But the return on investment for my model is about 400%, for the excessive model, 660%, and the sandbag model about 253%, which is way beyond what you get in just saving your money in a bank account. So if you had a bank account, your amount invested would be $100,000, which should be the same as what you get back. But if you invested in Bitcoin using my model, you should get back about $506,000 with an average Bitcoin price of $165,000 over that investment period. So that's the first model of $200 a week until the year 2030. Now for the second model, what we're going to do is we're going to take $50 a week. I've had some questions, people asking, I'm a student, etc. Does it make sense to even save $50 a week? Well, let me tell you, it does. So again, using the same analysis, the sandbag model, my model, and the excessive model, your total Bitcoin investing $50 a week flat every week for 505 weeks, that'll take us to December 2030, you will earn 0.18 Bitcoins under the sandbag model, 0.15 Bitcoins under my model, and 0.13 Bitcoins. And that is worth, respectively, $90,000, $126,000, and $191,000. So yes, it is substantial. Again, that $50 that could be a savings at Starbucks can easily rack up to $126,000 over the next 500 weeks. So it is definitely worthwhile. Now, it's interesting as well to note about this is that $25,000 invested jumps to $126K under my expected model. And that is a 400% ROI. And it's about $37,000 difference from the sandbag model. So even the worst case scenario, you're still going to have $89,000, which is not bad at all. Let's go to $500 a week until December 2030. So this is a total investment amount of $252,000, and that will yield under my expected model about $1.26 million in future Bitcoin value, or about 1.528 Bitcoins. Again, assuming Bitcoin goes to $827,000 by the year 2030, which is my conservative estimate. Now, what's also interesting is if you have 1.5 Bitcoin, you will be in the top 2% of all Bitcoin holders, which is quite impressive. So that's something to strive for. I know $500 a week is a lot of money, but if it's at all possible, other than saving in maybe a traditional 401k or some other savings vehicle, this is definitely worth considering, again, with a small percentage of your money. And of course, none of this is investment advice. This is edutainment. So the next model is 2,000 British pounds a month. What will that amount to? I have a lot of viewers from the United Kingdom that are very interested in what this would be. So assuming the exchange rate is a constant 1.39 pounds to the dollar over the next 10 years, which of course it may go up or may go down, but that was the assumption. Your total investment is £350,000 over 505 weeks, which is substantial. Using the sandbag model, that'll end up 3xing to nearly £915,000 and 1.3 million under my expected model, and nearly 2 million under the excessive model, £2 million, which is a big chunk of change of about 1.856 Bitcoins. Now the ROI is 160%, 270%, and 461%, which is super interesting. And again, that is worth considering. In the next model, we look at the euro. Somebody asked me, if I just invested 2,000 euros as a one-time hit today, What will it be worth by the year 2030? Now, this assumes the euro exchange rate is constant at 1.19 over the period of time, because my Bitcoin models are all denominated in US dollars. So the Bitcoin price in euros per December 23 under my sandbag model is about 411,000 euros. My expected model about 684,000 euros, and my excessive model is about 1.2 million euros. So that would help you have that investment of 2,000 euros today, right now, would buy you 0.0346 Bitcoins. And based on those models, would be worth anywhere from about 14,000 euros to about 24,000 euros, my expected model, and 42,000 euros in my excessive model. So just sometimes thinking about putting that 2,000 away, locking it away for 10 years, it could be a nice surprise at the end of that term. Again, yielding, based on our excessive scenario, over 40,000 euros, which could be a nice little nest egg for somebody. So there is one thing I do want to mention though, and that is purchasing power. A quick reminder of what's going on now with all the money printing. The question is, if you do have $1 million worth of Bitcoin, US dollars worth of Bitcoin in 10 years, what is it really worth? Well, inflation decreases purchasing power, which is the number of goods and services you'd be able to purchase. So if you look at the price of lumber today, it's gone up by 300% in a year. Everything is getting way more expensive real fast. And so what I have done here is I've taken my very conservative 7% inflation rate over the next 10 years, when I really believe it's more like 15%, but just taking that conservative 7%, the government will tell you it's 3% inflation. I'll tell you it's more like 7 or 15%. But $1 million in today's terms, purchasing power in the year 2030, is worth $520,000. Now, the reason I say that is, if this model says you could have $1 million worth of Bitcoin, US dollars, in the year 2030, technically it only means you have about $520,000 worth of equivalent purchasing power in the future. So I just want you all, quick reminder on that one is, again, to make sure you don't forget. So as usual, all roads lead to Bitcoin, but let's go to some of the conclusions, which are very, very important. And one of the things that really came out from this study is, number one, time in the market beats timing the market. So the earlier you can get in, the earlier you can invest, the better it is. So imagine buying Ethereum 13 months ago for $200. It's now $3,500. That's a 17x in just over a year. But if you invest today, it'll cost you $3,500. If you invest 13 months ago, it's $200. So use that as kind of a good benchmark to really understand exactly where things can go and how fast they can move in this space. Again, everything is in flux, so bear that in mind. But again, getting in early and investing hard is very important. So if you're thinking about buying that new Mercedes, or a lease on a car for $1,000 or $500 a month, think about the opportunity cost of buying that car versus investing today in assets like Bitcoin or Ethereum. Again, it's substantial. Point number two, and this is kind of a double-edged sword, because Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger were in the news a lot. There were some wise things that these folks have said in the past and some silly things. First silly thing is Bitcoin is rat poison. I think these guys simply just don't get it, and they come from a different era. And they're probably a little bit envious when they're struggling to get a return above zero, and they see this stuff exploding all the time. They just think it's crazy. And things like Dogecoin as well don't help the matter any. But the second thing that really is very important from Warren Buffett, and I do like this, and that is, the stock market is a device for transferring money from the impatient to the patient. And what I'm seeing out there a lot, especially in a lot of the messages that I get from people, is people are impatient. So what I mean by this is, you have people that maybe purchased Bitcoin 4 or 5 weeks ago, and it's flat. And they look over the fence and they see Ethereum, it's up over 50% in a week. It's up 5.1 times this year so far, from 660 to right now we are at nearly $3,400. And that frustrates people and makes them take action sometimes, which can cost a lot down the line. So all I say is, try to get into the best assets early and wait and be patient. And don't try to switch around, because, if somebody switches now from Ethereum and they buy at they sell a Bitcoin today at, say, 56,000 and buy Ethereum at 3,400, And then Ethereum goes down to 2,800 again, and then Bitcoin goes up to 70, 80,000. That can be a problem. So again, just be patient, but it's a very, very important thing here. And that's why playing the long game for Bitcoin is a very, very safe play. So let's jump into the conclusions so far, and the real learnings finally from this whole thing is investing early is better. The more you can invest now versus later is good. Now, if you want to check out my other video on nailing dollar cost averaging entry points, please check that out. But that's more for the advanced people. Investing weekly is better than monthly. Fiat denomination is not important. Everything should be denominated in Bitcoin. Also remember, negative interest rate environments means people need to seek out alternatives. There's no point in letting your money debase by 7 or 15% per year, paying no interest or zero interest or even negative interest. Fiat hedges are key, and returns over the next 10 years will be nowhere near as high as the last decade, but they will still be very good nonetheless. So, as usual, big thank you to everybody on Patreon. I am the Swiss Army knife in your back pocket, and some cool stuff coming as well there. And finally, if you want more, please subscribe and like. And let me know again, quick reminder in the comment if you want to run these same numbers for Ethereum. Take care. Bye.